When I bought the old farmhouse on Ridge Hollow Road, I wasn't looking for mystery, just peace. The kind of quiet you can only get miles away from anyone else, where the night sky stretches forever, and your only company is the crickets and the hum of power lines. But the house had quirks. The wiring was ancient, cloth-wrapped copper from the 1940s. Every time I flipped a switch, something somewhere buzzed or dimmed. As an electrician, I figured I could fix it all in time. It gave me a project, something to keep my hands busy and my mind off the divorce. Then the light started turning on. The first night, it flicked to life at 3:03 a.m., the porch light bright and steady. I thought maybe I'd left the switch on and a loose connection was bridging the circuit. I went outside in my slippers, breath fogging in the chill, and shut it off. The next night, same thing. 3:03 a.m. sharp. After the third night, I replaced the switch, checked the junction box, even swapped the bulb. Still, every night at the same time, that damned light came on. On the fourth night, I stayed up with a multimeter and a mug of black coffee. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood. 2:59, 3:00, 3:01. My eyes were on the porch window, waiting. Then, faintly, I heard it. A low hum. Not from the wiring, from below. The porch light snapped on. I dropped my mug. The bulb glared like a spotlight through the window, but it wasn't the brightness that froze me. It was what I saw for a split second through the frosted glass. A shadow, human-shaped, standing just outside the pool of light. When I yanked the door open, there was no one there. Only the night, cold and hollow. I crouched and touched the wooden floorboards of the porch. They were vibrating, ever so slightly, as if something underneath was moving. The light above me flickered twice, then steadied again. And somewhere below the porch, I heard the faintest sound, a soft, deliberate tapping, like someone knocking from inside the ground. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every light on, listening. The house breathed and groaned like an old man with secrets. That sound beneath the porch, soft, rhythmic, patient, kept replaying in my mind. The next morning, I went outside in daylight. The porch looked ordinary enough, chipped paint, loose nails, sagging steps. But when I crouched and peered into the crawl space beneath, I saw something strange. A section of dirt directly under the porch had been disturbed recently, darker, looser, as if it had been dug up and filled in again. I lay flat on the ground and reached under, fingers brushing the soil. It was cold and slightly damp. About a foot down, my fingertips hit something solid. Metal, maybe. The thought of a buried pipe crossed my mind, but something about it didn't feel right. The soil didn't match the rest of the yard. This patch was newer. I fetched a flashlight and shone it underneath. Amid the tangle of old wiring and support beams, something glinted faintly. It was a small metal box, half buried in the earth. My pulse picked up. Maybe an old junction box or antique fuse panel. I crawled under, knees scraping the dirt until I could reach it. The box was about the size of a lunch pail, sealed shut with rusted latches. It took effort to pry it loose, but eventually I dragged it out. Back on the porch, I wiped the dirt off with my sleeve. The box had no label, just an engraving. MM, 1952. I flipped the latches. The hinges screamed in protest. Inside were three things. An old silver lighter. A folded Polaroid, yellowed with age. And a small key. The photograph was of this house, no mistaking the porch railing and the maple tree out front. But there were two people in the picture, a man and a little girl, both smiling. On the back, in smudged pencil, someone had written, "Keep the light on for me." I didn't know what to make of it, but when I touched the lighter, a chill ran through me. It was ice cold, like it had been kept in a freezer. Then, just as I turned the lighter over in my hand, the porch light above me flicked on in broad daylight. The bulb glowed white-hot, buzzing, almost angry. And from beneath the porch, I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Only this time, it was faster. Urgent. The knock stopped as soon as I shouted. My voice echoed off the trees and came back empty. I stood there breathing hard, staring down at the boards, waiting for it to start again. It didn't. The light above me kept buzzing like a hornet trapped in glass. I killed the power at the breaker panel, yanked the bulb out of its socket, and waited for the quiet. My own reflection in the dark window looked pale, jittery, like I was seeing myself from somewhere else. That afternoon I decided to dig. The soil under the porch was stubborn, full of rocks and old roots. Each shovel scrape echoed off the foundation. After about 2 feet, the earth changed color, from gray-brown to a deep, wet clay, and then my shovel struck wood. I froze. It wasn't a beam or post. The wood was too smooth, too thin, like the side of a box. I brushed away the dirt until I could see a corner. It was a small wooden chest, sealed tight. The same initials were carved into the lid. M.M. My heart was thudding. I hauled it out into the sunlight, mud clinging to the edges. I half expected it to crumble when I pried it open, but it held firm, as if someone had built it to last. Inside was a stack of papers wrapped in waxed cloth. Old, brittle. The top page was a newspaper clipping dated 1953. Local girl missing, Martha Mayfield, age 9. The photo hit me like a punch. The little girl in the clipping was the same one from the Polaroid. Same braid, same smile. Underneath the clipping was a letter written in shaky handwriting. She keeps the light on. I hear her footsteps every night. I buried her to make it stop, but she won't let me sleep. If anyone finds this, keep the light on. No signature. I sat there staring at the page until the words blurred. A cold wind stirred the porch rail, and for the first time I realized how quiet the world had gotten. No birds, no insects, just stillness. And then, softly from somewhere behind me, came a child's whisper. You turned it off. I spun around. Nothing. The porch light socket, empty a moment ago, was now glowing faintly, as if a bulb had reappeared in it. The light was back, and it wasn't waiting for 3 a.m. anymore. I backed away from the porch steps, never taking my eyes off that faintly glowing bulb. It hummed, a low vibration that prickled against my skin like static. There was no power running to it, the breaker was still off, but the light didn't care. I stepped back into the house and locked the door, more out of instinct than logic. The photo of Martha Mayfield sat on the kitchen table beside the letter and the silver lighter. The lighter? That damned thing was still cold, colder now than before. I flicked it open. No flame. But for an instant I swore I saw movement in the reflection on the metal lid. A small figure standing on the porch, face pale, eyes too wide. I slammed it shut. By dusk, the house felt wrong. The walls seemed to lean closer, the air heavier. I poured myself a whiskey and sat by the window facing the porch, trying to reason this out. Old house? Bad wiring? Sleep deprivation? None of it explained why a dead girl's name was buried under my floorboards. At exactly 3 a.m., the light brightened again, blinding white like a camera flash. And in that flash, I saw her. A little girl standing just beyond the porch railing, barefoot, wearing a nightgown that hung limp and dirty. Her head tilted slightly like she was studying me through the window. "Martha?" I whispered before I could stop myself. She didn't move. Her lips parted and I heard her voice. Not through the glass, but inside my head. "Keep it on." The bulb flared. The entire porch glowed, the boards trembling as if something heavy moved beneath them. I stumbled back, my drink spilling across the floor. The light snapped off. Total darkness. Then, 3 sharp knocks at the front door. I froze. The knocks came again, harder this time. I forced myself to look through the peephole. Nothing, just black. When I opened the door, the porch was empty. But the dirt under the steps had shifted again. A small depression had formed, like something pushing up from below. I could smell earth, freshly turned. Before I could move, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. Unknown number. I answered it. A child's voice whispered on the line, barely audible through the static. I'm still here. The phone call ended in dead air. Not even a dial tone, just silence so deep it seemed to hum inside my skull. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every sound in that house, the ticking pipes, the settling beams, felt alive, watching. By dawn, I decided to go into town. Ridge Hollow was small, just a gas station, a diner, and a library that hadn't seen fresh paint since Reagan. I took the newspaper clipping with me and showed it to the librarian, a silver-haired woman named Ruth. Her eyes widened the second she saw the headline. Oh, Lord, I remember that. Poor little Martha Mayfield. She glanced at the date. Her daddy built your house, Milton Mayfield. Carpenter by trade. Lived there till he didn't. Till he didn't? I pressed. She lowered her voice. They said he went mad after she vanished. Folks around here believed he took his own life in that house. But they never found his body, Milton Mayfield. M. The initials on the box. I thanked her, left a donation I couldn't afford, and drove back, my hands gripping the wheel too tight. If Milton built the house, he knew every inch of it. Maybe there was something else he'd hidden, something I hadn't found. Back home, I tore through the basement, tracing the lines of the old wiring. One thick cable ran up toward the porch and disappeared behind a wall. I pried away the paneling and found a narrow wooden door I'd never noticed before, painted the same color as the wall. It opened onto a crawl space, just big enough to crouch in. The smell hit me first. Old earth and mildew tinged with something metallic. I shone my flashlight around. The beam landed on a bundle of wires that ran to an old rotary timer, like something you'd use for outdoor lights. It was still ticking, still connected. And the dial was set to 3:03 a.m. Milton had wired the light to turn on every night automatically, but why? My fingers brushed a section of wall beside the timer. The wood felt softer there, like it had been replaced recently, or long ago by someone hiding a mistake. I pressed harder and the board gave way. Behind it was a cavity, a small, dark void filled with dirt and bones, a child's bones. The air turned cold, the light flickered, and I heard that voice again, faint, pleading. He said he'd come back for me. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. Its beam jittered across the wall, the dirt, the bones. For a long second, I just stared, too shocked even to breathe. The bones were small, delicate. The skull lay tilted sideways, the jaw partially open as if mid-scream. I scrambled up the stairs and out of the basement, gulping air like a drowning man. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial 911. When the sheriff's deputies arrived, they didn't say much. They cordoned off the house and called in the coroner. I sat on the porch steps wrapped in a blanket, watching them carry small, labeled bags up from below. Bone fragments, scraps of decayed cloth, a tiny shoe. By mid-afternoon, Sheriff Dean McCall, a big man with tired eyes, sat beside me. You said you found her by accident? He asked, scribbling notes. Yeah, I thought the wiring was bad, but I stopped. The porch light keeps turning on. Every night. I figured it was electrical, but he gave me a skeptical look. You saying a ghost flipped the switch? I didn't answer. He sighed. For what it's worth, the coroner found enough to match with an old missing person report. Martha Mayfield. Looks like you found what no one else did. I nodded numbly. Mind if we keep the property taped off for a few days? Take as long as you need, I said. That night, I checked into the only motel in town, a squat place with humming neon and paper-thin walls. I thought I'd finally sleep, but at 3:03 a.m., I woke to the faint glow of light outside my window. The porch light. except I wasn't home. I pressed my face to the glass. Across the empty parking lot, every single street lamp flickered in unison 3 times, then went dark. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Static hissed. Then a man's voice. Hoarse, trembling. She wasn't supposed to be awake. I froze. Who is this? The voice grew frantic, whispering through the static. I buried her to keep the light off. But she won't stop knocking. You have to fix the wiring. Fix what I broke. And then a faint sound in the background. A creaking floorboard followed by 3 distinct knocks. The line went dead. I looked at the clock. 3:04 a.m. Somewhere in that motel room, a lamp turned on by itself. I checked out of the motel at dawn, leaving the key on the counter without a word. I should have driven away. Sold the house, burned it, whatever it took. But something pulled me back to Ridge Hollow Road. Maybe guilt, maybe obsession. Maybe the same thing that had once kept Milton Mayfield from leaving. The sheriff's tape flapped in the wind when I returned. The yard looked the same, but the house felt emptier somehow, hollowed out. I half expected the light to be on already, waiting for me. Inside, the air was thick and cold. The floorboards creaked in that same familiar rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. I walked through each room, flashlight in hand, tracing the wiring again. Every line converged in one place. The timer under the porch. I crawled back into the space beneath, forcing myself to look where they'd removed the remains. The soil was darker now, almost black. The timer still ticked. Its motor whirred faintly even though the power was off. That's when I noticed a second wire branching away from the timer, thin and almost invisible, leading deeper into the wall. I followed it with my hand, prying back the planks until I reached a small metal box. Another switch. The label above it, written in faint pencil, read, Override. I hesitated. The air around me felt charged, humming like an electrical storm. I flipped the switch. Every light in the house came on at once. The porch light blazed white, and the walls began to whisper. It wasn't sound exactly, it was pressure, vibration, language without words. Through the hum, a voice emerged, the same man's voice from the phone call. She woke me up. I told her not to play near the wiring. The whispers grew clearer, layered with another voice, a little girl's sobs pleading. Daddy, it hurts. I stumbled backward, hit my head on a beam. The timer spun wildly, the dial whirring faster and faster. The entire house groaned as if something deep within the walls was shifting. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. The lights flickered out. In the darkness, a faint glow began to rise from the porch. Soft, warm, like the bulb was breathing. And in that glow, through the slats of the floorboards, I saw 2 shadows now. One tall, one small. They were holding hands. Then the voice came again. Gentle this time, almost relieved. The circuit's complete. When the voices stopped, the silence felt alive. The house seemed to inhale. Then somewhere behind me, the timer gave one last tick. Sharp, decisive, and the porch light steadied into a cold white beam. I crawled out from beneath the porch, dirt streaking my hands and face. The night air was electric, shimmering faintly around the house. The bulb overhead pulsed like a heart. 2 figures stood in the glow. The tall man's shape was flickering, his edges unraveling like smoke. The little girl clung to his hand, her eyes wide but calm now, her face clearer than I'd ever seen it. Martha. She looked at me and smiled, the same smile from the photograph. Thank you, she said softly. You fixed it. The man, Milton, turned his hollow gaze toward me. I never meant to hurt her. She found the live wire. I tried to save her, but the current took her first. I thought if I buried her, the current would break. His voice trembled. But the light kept coming back. The air crackled. The bulb flared brighter until it was almost blue-white. The ground vibrated. I shielded my face, shouting over the rising hum. "What do you want from me?" Martha's voice floated through the roar. "You know the current. You can finish it." And then I understood. The wiring, the timer, the porch light, it wasn't a haunting, it was a circuit, a loop of guilt and grief that had been running since 1953. If I completed the connection, grounded it, it would end. I grabbed the toolbox from the steps, found the grounding rod I'd used to test the old line, and drove it deep into the earth beside the porch. My hands shook as I clipped the loose wire to it. Sparks jumped, stinging my fingers. The hum rose to a scream. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, the light was gone. The figures, too. The porch stood quiet in the dawn haze. Only the faint smell of ozone remained. I sat there for a long time, staring at the dead bulb. Eventually, I went inside and flipped the main breaker back on. Nothing flickered. Nothing hummed. For the first time in weeks, the house was just a house. I slept until afternoon. When I woke, sunlight poured through the window, warm and ordinary. I almost believed it was over. Until I saw it on the kitchen table, next to the Polaroid. The silver lighter. It was open, flame-burning steady blue. And faintly, beneath the floorboards, a small voice whispered, almost playful now, "Don't let the light go out."